Welcome back to another episode of the Gut Academy. I'm Dr. William DePaolo, and today we're going to continue our discussion on the different constituents of the human microbiome, discussing who they are, what they do, how they help our health, and what we can do to make them even stronger. Today we're going to discuss a genus of bacteria called Roseburia. This genus, Roseburia, comprises one of the core bacteria that make up our microbiome. So what this means as being a core bacteria is that it's found in all populations of the world. There's no geographic or age or gender, sex specificity for this bacteria. It's pretty much ubiquitously found throughout the populations of the world. And just because it's found throughout the populations of the world does not necessarily mean that it's at a super high abundance in all of us. In fact, it makes up roughly between 5 and 13% of the bacteria in the human gut. Roseburia the genus is comprised of 5 species of different types of bacteria, and these 5 species are thought to play a really important role in the human gut because of the metabolites that they produce, as well as contributing to some health effects and health benefits, particularly when it comes to obesity and diabetes. And we'll discuss that in a minute. But what is interesting, starting off when we look at Roseburia, is the fact that you cannot find Roseburia in the microbiome of newborn infants. And it's actually acquired through the consumption of human breast milk, which you may not be aware of, but the human breast milk has its own microbiome that is passed on to the infant during breastfeeding, which is another reason why breastfeeding is a great idea if you are able to do that for your children, because there's these bacteria that are commensal bacteria that are really healthy, like Roseburia, that reside within the gut, the breast microbiome. As the infant nurses, it will colonize their own guts, and eventually they become a stable part of the infant's microbiome. What's interesting, though, is that Roseburia does that. It gets into the infants and it colonizes, and then over time, throughout the infant's lifetime, all the way to adulthood and through its older years of its life, the level of Roseburia will slowly decrease over time. We're not actually sure why. It could be because of other bacterial populations increasing, but we do know that Roseburia does decrease over time in adults. In the body, Roseburia secretes a number of molecules that are super important for human health. One that we're going to focus on is Butyrate, which you probably, if you watch any of my videos, you always know that we always come back, or we seemingly always come back, to discussing short-chain fatty acids. And Butyrate is sort of the superstar of the short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids are really important molecules that have widespread effects, not just in the gut, even though they're produced in the gut. They have effects throughout the whole body. And Butyrate in particular is a really important one because it has a role in strengthening the epithelial cells that line the intestine, and that keeps the barrier nice and tight so toxins from the inside of the intestine can't escape and get into our bodies. Not just toxins, but pathogens and other really bad factors that we don't want to permeabilize or permeate that layer. Butyrate also helps contribute to mucus production. It is a really important molecule as far as immunology and mucosal immunology goes, regulating sort of immune responses in the gut. And it can it can actually combat pathogens. It actually has an anti-microbial effect as well, which will reduce pathogen burdens and the diseases that they cause. So overall, butyrate is a really important molecule that you want a lot of, and Roseburia is actually a powerhouse at making butyrate. So of all the bacteria, there's probably a triad that are well known for producing butyrate, and that's Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, Roseburia, and then a bacteria called Eubacterium rectile. We haven't done a video on that one yet, but I think it's on its way, and I think it's going to be done pretty soon. So you can get more information about that bacteria there. But this triad of commensal microbes are really what produces a lot of the butyrate in our bodies. And so how do they do that? Well, again, if you've listened to any of my videos, you probably think that we always come back, in addition to short-chain fatty acids, we also start talking about fiber and complex carbohydrates, because our bodies cannot digest fiber, and so they just don't have the machinery for it. And so as we ingest it, it goes through our small intestine, it reaches the colon, where there's Roseburia, Faecalibacterium prausnitzii, and Eubacterium rectal, as well as some other bacteria that are really good at chewing down that fiber, digesting it, fermenting it, and producing short-chain fatty acids as a result of that. So Roseburia is thriving, or will thrive, in people whose diets is high in fiber and high in prebiotic molecules. Those include probably people that eat the Mediterranean diet or vegetarians, because they seem to have a lot more fiber content in their diets. This is going to promote Roseburia. Why Roseburia in particular is really good at maintaining itself in the gut as well as producing butyrate is because the pH of the gut is such that it allows Roseburia to thrive also. So as our gut bacteria start fermenting different products, we have the lactic acid producing bacteria we talked about that with lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. They're producing lactic acid, which will lower the pH of the intestine down to about 5.5. And what that does is it prevents pathogens, because pathogens do not like to live where it's very acidic. So it helps keep pathogens from binding. But also Roseburia does really well in this sort of low pH. And so it's again an environment that Roseburia will thrive in. And you'll have plenty of it so that you can digest the fibers that you're consuming. So I said that Roseburia has some associations with a number of different diseases, and that's true. It's actually considered sort of a marker of good health, your level of Roseburia. So the higher the level, it's linked with having a good health status and having a really nice anti-inflammatory responses and things like that. So what has been found is that there's been associations between Roseburia and different diseases, like a decrease in Roseburia is associated with patients that have IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, specifically ulcerative colitis, as well as irritable bowel syndrome, colorectal cancer, and type 2 diabetes. It's also been associated with metabolism and obesity. So these populations are really important to maintain so that they can help prevent or reduce the symptoms of these diseases. Now you have to remember, and I've talked about this before, is that we don't know right now with the microbiome whether or not this lower abundance during a disease is the cause of the disease or whether it's a symptom of the disease. So we don't know if it's causative or if it's just a symptom, if it's just created because of the disease environment. So the science just hasn't gotten there yet, so we're not quite sure. What we do know is that if there's lower levels of Roseburia, we see that associated with people who have these diseases that are listed here. Now, if you want to increase your levels of Roseburia, if you're concerned that you have IBD or IBS or these things run in your family, if you feel that your diet's not been really strong and that you really want to try to boost it as much as possible and you want to get those Roseburia populations up higher, well, we don't have Roseburia probiotics yet. I don't know if anybody's working on them, but Roseburia, you can't go out to the supermarket and buy it. But what you can do is you can eat foods that create or that cause it to grow. So you basically feed these bacteria through your diet. To increase its abundance, there's a number of different foods that you can eat. So right off the bat, fiber. Anything that has a lot of fiber in it, go for it. Our society eats a lot less fiber than they should. And so what that means is that any additional fiber in your diet is well tolerated, and we're actually sort of lacking fiber within the human race right now. So increase your fiber. That means eating lots more vegetables, all different colors of the rainbow you want to have on your plate, so that you're eating all these different vegetables with different photochemicals and phytochemicals that will help strengthen your immune system and strengthen your gut. Also, you can eat foods that contain capsaicin. Capsaicin is something that's found in chili peppers. This will increase the amount of Roseburia. Roseburia likes to have that around. It feeds off of it. Also, it uses long-chain arabinoxylins that can be found in rye, wheat, barley, oats, and rice, as well as the prebiotic inulin, which is found in leeks, chicory root, asparagus, and a whole host of other foods. So increasing these foods in your diet, increasing fiber in your diet will increase those levels of Roseburia. Breastfeeding your child, if you can, will also help give that baby the Roseburia it needs early on in life, because as I said, it starts to decrease as we get older. So we have this guy only around for a limited amount of time. So that basically wraps up our discussion on Roseburia. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, I'm William DePaolo. Thank you.